Welcome to the Minor Consult, where I speak to leaders who are shaping our world in diverse ways. Today, I'm delighted to welcome actor, musician, and producer John Stamos. You may know him as the young rebel from General Hospital, Uncle Jesse from Full House, or Marvin Korn in his current project, Big Shots. But John's career is so much more than those and other roles. I'm excited to speak to him about sustaining a decades-long career in fickle Hollywood and the impact of personal relationships on his career. John, welcome. It's great to see you.
Thank you, and you have a great voice already. You look great on camera.
Well, I have a face for radio, and maybe I have a voice for radio too.
Listening to your podcast is fantastic. And you said 4 decades. I think now we're going on. I think you said one decade.
Decades long. I should have been plural. Yeah, no,
Who
4
wrote
decades.
That for you? Yeah, 4 decades.
Amazing run.
Yeah.
What sustained you? I mean, you're always original and new, and those who follow you, we've seen you in so many different roles. And what keeps you energized and motivated?
Well, I'm always trying to keep learning. For one thing, we're just a continual work in progress, right? So that's kind of keeps me going. But I think, I look back and as I was listening to your podcast, I heard you interviewing all these incredible leaders, and I was learning so much. But I was like, where did I learn to lead? Because, over the last 10 or 15 years, you end up being what they call the number one on the call sheet. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but it's really a responsibility that I've taken on just to be, a good example to the rest of the cast and the crew, and show up early. I know my lines. I try to be nice to everybody. But I think I got it from my dad, and I think that, getting your point, I think that my longevity is more about a decent reputation, and hopefully that I treat people well and I do my job well. That makes
such a difference.
Yeah.
I think that's been even more important during all of us were affected by COVID, entertainment in particular. Right. Can you describe your personal experiences during COVID in terms of how it affected, your production, how it affected your coworkers?
Yes. Right.
And now that we're coming out of it, I think the need for respect in the workplace has never been greater.
Yeah, you're right. And it was difficult for everybody, right? And it was a shock. What I learned first was that we don't have control. And we never had control. That's what's kind of scary about it all. So it was just such a frightening. Now, the only silver lining was that I got to spend 2 years with my son during some pretty informative. He's 4, and today was his first day at school, and I was crying. He was like, "See you, Dad. Bye." I think he might have flipped me off on my way to the car. I'm not sure, but his fingers, tiny little fingers. So that part of it was good. But I remember it was like. God, it was like the world was ending almost. And I was on the Paramount lot, and my friends were down a couple stages. Like, "Oh, we're getting out of here. Come on, let's." I'm in the middle of a scene, Dan. I got to finish. No, man, you got to evacuate. And then, the next day, I think we didn't come back. I'd never seen anything like that. I've never, right? I mean, you of course. Yeah. Was everybody coming to you saying, "What do we do? What do we take?"
The reality began for us early in the morning of March 6th, 2020, when we had our first patient who happened to be a faculty member admitted to our hospital with COVID, and it was like, this is really happening. And then it was, we didn't know anything about the virus at that. We were washing our hands for 20 minutes, for goodness sakes. Well, it turns out, it's good to wash your hands, but that's not the way the virus is getting from one person to the next. We didn't know much about how to take care of people. We didn't have very effective therapeutics. We didn't have a vaccine.
Why were we so vulnerable? Why were we so vulnerable at that moment? And are we still for the next one?
I think we've learned a few things. First, Operation Warp Speed and getting these RNA-based vaccines in record time, and that was amazing. No one would have predicted we could have done that beforehand. There were some people who had been warning us, like Bill Gates, that we were in for a pandemic, and but I think many of us just add that to the list of all the other things that maybe we're at risk for. But I think we're marginally better off than before. But I think rebuilding the trust in science, the trust in medicine, that I think we've got work to do on.
Yeah, you spend your whole life studying and becoming a dean. I mean, you're as high as it gets in this medical field and science, and then you have these people coming out, shooting holes and like just for their own, for their own good. I mean, it must have made you crazy.
Well, I did quite a bit of media then, just talking about what we know, what we don't know. I think it's important for when we don't know something that we say we don't, just to be honest with people, we don't know what it is.
Right.
We should never try to depict ourselves as having more knowledge, more understanding than we do. I think trust requires that we always be honest, and that when we feel vulnerable, we need to be able to relay that to people and how it's making us feel. But yeah, I don't fully understand how things became as politicized as they did. I wouldn't have predicted that wearing a mask would be as controversial as it is. I do understand that none of us likes to be told what to do in life.
Right.
But I mean, what was the reaction in Hollywood? I'm sure it was varied, but among your friends and colleagues.
It was, it was scary because we'll be off for a couple of weeks. A month goes by, another month goes by. Yeah. And we just, like you said, nobody knew anything. We didn't know. And that was scary. And then when we went back, it was this protocol. And I was a little worried about going back. And in fact, I had a couple people on my show that didn't want to go. And I got it. There was some medical issues. And also it was like, I didn't want to put everyone at risk. But then at the same time, I knew how important it was for people to get back to work, to pay their bills, to take care of their families, and so we put on our masks and did everything that we were told to do, and we did pretty well. We got shut down halfway through the first season of Big Shot, and we had about maybe 4 shows left, and then we went back, and it was difficult, but it was worth it. I think everybody was like, "Come on, man, we're a team. We got to finish the season. We have such a good show here." I work with I play a basketball coach who gets thrown out of the NCAA for throwing a chair, and I have to work my way back up with an all-girls private high school in Laguna. So there was just a lot of young girls, and it was one of those things where it was appearing on our set here and there. They tested us 3-4 times a week. And I think maybe Disney bought a testing, facility somewhere. I was like, that guy is so smart. But so we did that, and then, someone would get it, and they couldn't, it was the HIPAA law that they couldn't say who it was, and that was just kind of weird because yes, of course we got to protect the privacy, but then you try to figure out who it is. Being a doctor, do a lot of people come up to you and say, this hurt my wrist. How do I? Because I played a doctor on TV. I know you.
I know you did. You did. Did you ever think about going to medical school?
No, I didn't even think about going to college. I could barely. I worked at my dad's restaurant, and he wanted me to take over the business. There was, he had 3 restaurants, and he wanted me to go to business school. And I wasn't great in school. I wasn't very academical, as I say, but I was street smart, Lloyd. He wanted me to go and take a business class, and I didn't want to go. And I went to the local Cerritos Cypress College, and I couldn't find that room, the sign-up room, where you go inside. So I went back and I said, "Dad," and I was working at the restaurant. He said, "All right, next semester you have to go to college. I'm going to take you if I have to, and you got to take over this." Okay, and I said to myself, "I got to get on TV. I got to get out of this college thing." And so I that was around the time I was 18, and I got on auditioned for General Hospital, and it was one of those deals where I auditioned on a Tuesday and Wednesday, shot the first episode on Thursday, and then it aired 2 weeks later, and I'm still working at my dad's restaurant, and it was it was like 30 million people watched General Hospital back then, something like that. And my dad said, "Okay, good." Here's part of the longevity too, I think. Boy, did my parents keep me humble. He made me stay. I had still worked at the restaurant on the weekends, and the shows were airing, and people were coming in saying, "Can I have a cheeseburger? Hey, aren't you the guy? Nah, give me a thing." But then the girls started coming around. It was the interesting time was that I was going from the caterpillar to the butterfly kind of thing, and girls were chasing me and coming around the restaurant. And so, Dad, I'm famous. I got to quit now. He eventually let me quit, but he always kept me grounded.
Your son is named for your dad, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
It
was really special. I wish they were around to see him. They'd be proud.
I really would. What are your son's 4,
Yeah.
and congratulations on first day of school. Big event.
Yeah.
Um, what, you know, thoughts about raising a child
Uh,
in today's
yeah.
environment? What's important for you and for your wife?
Right. Luckily, we're on the same page with all that, and she's incredible. She's just I can't. I knew she'd be a good mother, but I mean, she reminds me of my mother, which is the highest compliment. My mom had enough love to fuel a small country. It was just love and encouragement. My parents never. I think that's a big part of my success too. Is that I never put up obstacles. It was like, you want to do it, do it. Work hard, work as hard as you can, be the best at what you do, or at least really, really good, and go for it. Nothing could stop you. And I always had that. I mean, sometimes I like to try to go back to that. Like you lose that fearlessness, where you just put it all out on the line. But we're trying to, people say, well, what have you learned by being a parent? And I really realize why there's so many messed up people in this world, because it takes so much, I think, to try to be a good parent. Even so much love and patience and sacrifice and common sense and attention and money, and it's do you have kids?
We do. We have 2 kids, both adults now. Yeah. It's been
And how was
wonderful.
that?
Oh, it
They
was
turned out
wonderful.
good.
They turned out great.
Why? You should give me some advice. Like, what is? I always ask parents with success, with kids. First of all, how'd you keep them alive? How old are they now?
31 and 28. Yeah, I mean, I too, you have a wonderful wife. I have a wonderful wife. And of course, when they were young, I was very much building my career as a young faculty member and working pretty hard. But still feel like the time we spent together was quality time. And, when I say they're doing well, they're both doing things that they really, really love in life. So our daughter's a physician. Our son works in your industry, actually. He does scenic design for live theater and for film in Los Angeles, and which he loves. And so they're happy, and that's what really matters.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just being good people, however you can get that across. Having respect for people, having love for people. It's just like, and I see my son has it naturally. He, like my mom did. He looks you right in the eye when he's talking, and that I love. And my mom would find, she would find the best part of you, and that's what she would define you as. It wasn't all the other stuff. So, but I just want him to be a good, loving, polite young boy, and he's none of those things yet, but someday. No, he's a good kid.
So, John, you talked a little bit about being fearless, and as I looked and I followed your career, and you described earlier about your first role at a young age, and you just went out and you got it, and then you've obviously had a number of major roles in film and television. Have you? And it strikes me that of course, someone who's as good as you are, it seems easy. Those of us know better that it isn't that easy. But what's been the biggest challenge for you? And maybe talk more about this fearless quality, because as I look at your career, I think you've certainly displayed that. But I bet there are times where there are things that have concerned you. And
well, a lot of failures. You learn from them, and you. Like you said, admit when you're wrong, or admit your mistakes, or take the hit. Like, okay, it's not coming back, the show, or whatever it may be. General Hospital. I feel that like you either have it immediately, like Leonardo DiCaprio or Jennifer Lawrence or somebody, or it takes you 20, 25 years to really settle in and be a good actor. I think that's that's the category I fall into. I mean, I think I came out fearless, like we said, but then you start thinking and overthinking, and you become famous or whatever that's about, and you start thinking about that and how you look. And so it's taken me this long, especially with this show. I could just sit back. It's great writing. David Kelly is the creator of the show, and I could just sit back and do the written words and think about the character and not think about anything else. But through the years, I've had a lot of ups and downs and sideways, and I've had a lot of losing my dad was a big blow for me. He was my hero. Yeah. So I kind of took that pretty hard and kind of got off course for a while. And my mom died, and I got really off course, and I had to sober up. That was 7 years in June, and that changed everything. It's confusing the universe. I think good things wanted to come my way And I always wanted to be a father. I always wanted to be a husband. I always wanted to be married and live that life as my parents did with my sisters and I. But it just wasn't happening, because I wasn't my best. I wasn't the way that God made me. I wasn't the way my parents raised me. I was just going down, and it's it happens. And if you don't, again, you make mistakes. Hopefully, you fix them. I think I've done my very best that I could do on being a good, clean guy. So I think that was downfall. I went. I remember after the challenge was after Full House. Over the years, I had a lot of mentors, which like adult male mentors. Jack Klugman was the first one. I did a show with him. He played my dad, and he was great. Taught me a lot. He used to call me the sponge because I really did want to. I still do. I still want to learn everything, And he did a very valuable thing because I know John Max listens to this podcast, and he's a writer, Jack would make me sit in the writer's room on Wednesdays, whatever the punch-up night was, and he would bring in Gary Marshall. That's where I met Gary Marshall and Harvey Miller and who else? Jerry Belson. These great, old-time great writers from The Odd Couple and the shows. And I would sit in the corner and watch, So he was a mentor. Gary Marshall became a really close friend and mentor. And, Don Rickles was one of those guys. I just have such affinity for these old, these great classic guys. I mean, luckily I got to just graze up against. I was doing, I think it was the second year of General Hospital, and I wanted to play music on that. They wouldn't let me play. I kept asking. And then Sammy Davis Jr. came on the show, and I said to my dad, I was like, "Who's this Sammy Davis guy? Son, there was no YouTube back then. There was no. I mean, these kids, with music and television, they can watch YouTube. They can learn so many things, which is so beautiful. But we didn't have that, so I didn't know who Sammy Davis was. So he said, "I think he's a drummer, son. Talk to him about drums." So there was a set. He was going to sing. There was a set. There was a band set. It was a talent show or something. I was the host, and I told him, I said, "I can't. I really want to play drums, but they won't let me on here." He said, "All right." He said, "Okay, hold on." And he walks somewhere, and he comes back, and I remember him being very emphatic about it. He says, "All right, just do what I say, man." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Just in the scene, do what I say, man." I do impressions too, Lloyd, just in case.
It's a pretty good one.
It's not that good. And so he gets on, I introduce him, he gets on the stage, he says, does whatever he's going to say, and he says, "Blackie, you play drums, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they cut to me, and I'm just like, "Yeah." And it was completely ad-libbed that I walked on stage. He said, "What are we going to do?" He said, "Let's do some jazz. 1, 2, 3, da, 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 da." He's playing piano. Ding, 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 ding. And it was one of those moments. Again, fearless because, I just wasn't, I don't know, I just wasn't thinking about myself that much. But when the challenge was leaving Full House because it was very specific when Gary Marshall got me that show because he was working he knew Bob Boyette and Tom Miller, and he recommended for the part, but it was tough. It was very stereotypical, and I kind of wanted to do more serious work, and I wanted to, and I said, "Jack, what do I do?" He hated the show, by the way. "Go get to the theater. Go to the theater." I said, "I've never done theater, And I wasn't a great singer. I could play drums. I'm a drummer. I'm never a great singer. But I said, okay, and I went and auditioned to replace Matthew Broderick in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. Never been on Broadway. Wasn't a singer. But I thought, okay, I'm going to study 10 to 12 hours a day until I, get there. And then once I get it, and I went in, again, fearless somehow, and I went in and did my thing, and they said, "You're hired." And I've done like 5, 6 Broadway shows since then. But we're finally starting to get fearless again. Like, you can't hurt. I don't care. I got a family now. I don't need you show business. You don't want me? Yeah, who cares? And that part of it, I remember I grew up with Jason Bateman a little bit, in show business, and he got so successful. And I said, "Let's go to lunch, man. What's the success?" And he said, "I just stopped giving a shit. I don't care. I don't care anymore."
Yeah.
And as soon as I stopped holding on so tightly to everything, if I don't get this, it's going to happen. He said, everything opened up for him.
Being a successful actor, you're always on. I mean, you describe being first on the call list. Certainly, when you're doing a live, Broadway show, how do you recharge? What's been important for you because also to continue to be successful, you have to be new, you have to be fresh, you have to always be on. And what's been your source of emotional psychic energy that keeps you going?
That's a great question. The key is when you come off a project like a Broadway run or a successful tour with the Beach Boys, sometimes I'll go out and do 20, 30. You have to have something, a cushion waiting for you. Because if you just come home and nothing's going on, you start walking in circles, because you've just come off such a high,
Yeah.
I usually, it's most of the time, if it's a long thing like a television show or something, I'll go on vacation maybe. Like I said, recently we went to Europe. Well, we did some music there, but
Sure.
But you try to. But now I have my family, so I can just come home and hang out with Billy, and he recharges me every day. He puts me in my place too. We were driving the other day, and you probably know you want to be cool to your kids. We were driving, and Kokomo came on the radio. I said, "Yeah, this is pretty cool, Bill. Your dad played drums on the Beach Boys." He goes, "Dad," takes a long beat. Do you know the Beatles? Smart ass, know the Beatles. Beach Boys aren't good enough for him. He loves coming. He comes to the shows now. It's fun. But I'm just blessed. I'm blessed and I'm grateful. And that's it. I get up. I either make a list or I go in my mind and I do like a grateful flow, like all the things I'm grateful for. And I have a few friends that are in the program and stuff, and we do a text thing. First we say G, and then underneath we write all the things we're grateful for. Then we write an F, and then we write the things that that we're afraid of at that moment. It could be the pandemic. It could be what's going on in, Washington, whatever it may be. And then A for your attribute. What are you? I'm a father today. I'm alert. I'm a human. And it's usually one word. I'm optimistic, or I'm kind, or and it's good to remind yourself. I mean, any time that you get too much into your head, get out of it and go do service. My mom was really into that. I've been doing a lot of work. And then my wife, God bless her, she started a podcast, and she could have done, some silly whatever podcast about Disneyland or something. And it's called How Can I Help? And she does this beautiful thing about she brings on people that are changing the world like you do. I'm not one, but your other guests are. And they're just people that are doing good in the world. And she, and it's really lovely what she does. And not only does she just sit on the microphone, she's like a couple months ago, I said, "Where are you going?" She goes, "I'm going to Tijuana. I'll see you." Tijuana? What for? We're going to go take care of some people down there and some kids. And it's like, wow. So she gets her hands in. So she's been a great example too of that. But that's it, right? That's a good key to just get out of your own way, be of service somehow, somewhere. Did you always want to be where you are, a doctor? Did you? I mean,
no, I never, certainly never dreamed about being a dean until later in my career. I enjoyed math and science, and thought being a physician was also a way to combine those and help people. And but I started out as a faculty member doing research, running a lab, taking care of patients in my field, and then.
What was your exact field then at that moment?
Yeah, so I study the way the balance system works, the inner ear balance system.
Really?
Wow. Yeah, so...
we need more people like you. Enough with the singers and the Instagram models and stuff. Come on, Wow, that's really interesting.
It was interesting. It still is, and but others now keep that torch going. And and I got interested in leadership because I thought... what I really enjoyed, I enjoyed my research a lot. And
you did? What part of that do you enjoy?
What I enjoyed the most was mentoring and working with others. And that's what drove me into leadership, because I realized if I was going to have impact beyond my lab group, which was, sizable, but not huge, then I needed to be in a leadership position where I could recruit and help, others build their careers. And so then that one thing led to another.
Where did you get that? Did you get that from your parents? Like that you wanted to lead, that you wanted to help a lot of people, not just where did that come from?
No, I think it came from, I grew up in Arkansas, so not from an academic family, but family that...
There's some academic families there in Arkansas, no?
There are, but mine wasn't particularly, but family who loved me a lot and wanted me to do well. So that meant going away after high school, and I haven't lived in Arkansas since high school, but still consider it to be sort of my roots and my home. And
were they so proud of you? Are they still around?
No, my parents are deceased, but I think people were proud, and and I'm, proud of sort of my roots and the people. But I think the sort of meaning that you get, that we get from interacting with others, and you mentioned about being first on the call list and how you set an example by knowing your lines, by being there on time. I've discovered just a thing like trying to show up on time for meetings.
Right. Yes.
There's nothing more valuable for anyone than our time, right?
Totally.
And
My dad used
I'm
to
sure
say that.
for you, when you're shooting something, you've got a whole crew in there, and if someone shows up later, they don't know their lines, and you basically wasted the time of dozens of people.
Yes, for sure. Those are all really important things. Luckily, I got them from my dad, who was always very disciplined, and I watched him in his he had this little burger joints, but he would treat the busboy the same way he would treat his most valued customer, and I've just never lost that. Plus, I enjoy people. I like talking to people. I like asking questions. I like
that's clear.
Finding out where they're from, what they do, family, so that part is good. But what were we going to say? Yeah, number one. Yeah, all of a sudden it just started happening where you're number one, and it's especially now when I'm working with a lot of I used to be the young guy on this shows, now, and so you want to just be. And I've when people come up and say that to me, you're a really good number one. I said, what? Oh, okay, thanks. But I've realized lately that it really is a real responsibility. So, you want to stay focused. You want to get there on time. You want to know your lines, but you want to be good to others. You want to be kind. Nowadays too, there's 20 actors, 30, 100 actors in line that could do just as good as you. So they don't tolerate it much. I mean, if that kind of behavior happens on the set, late and arrogance and goodbye, we're gone. And if I'm there, on time or early, and I know my lines, I'm okay learning my lines, but then they feel that they should too. This Big Shot is a very good. It's a great warm set, nice people and stuff.
You mentioned you've been working with the Beach Boys for quite some time. Tell us how that got started, and also I'd love to know what your favorite Beach Boys song is.
What's your favorite?
Gosh, I don't know. I'm a cellist, and so
really?
I've played.
No kidding. You do a lot of stuff, man.
Yeah, well, that's kept me sane.
Is that how you keep fresh? Like keep learning? So you asked me early on, like how do I keep interested in life instead of just learning new things, huh? With you?
Try to. I began playing the cello as a kid, so it's been a constant. And during the pandemic, because 18 months without travel, and also, although constantly on Zoom, of course, but no evening dinners or things like that for 18 months. So I was able to start practicing again. Turns out Zoom cello lessons work really well.
Oh, yeah? Cool.
Particularly with my teacher on the East Coast, who I studied with before moving out here. But
what's the most famous rock and roll song that features a cello?
Gosh, I don't know what the most famous one is. There are a lot use instrumental music in the background. But
we're talking about the Beach Boys. So what Beach Boys song features a cello? Do you know?
I've read. When I was in high school, we did some transcriptions. But
let me see if I can get it.
But the music is very. It's joyful. It's approachable.
But listen to Good Vibrations. There's a famous cello part on there. It goes, I'm picking out. You got to have a fast arm. You probably do. Yeah. It's a great feature of a cello in a song.
That's great.
When you hear it, you go like, oh, that right. Brian Wilson was a genius, and he would put together this orchestration. He could hear every. He was like a dog. He could hear every. Then and their mother, Dennis, Carl, Brian were brothers, and then Mike Love was their cousin. But Audrey, their mother, talked about the vibrations. A dog can hear different vibrations and different frequencies and stuff. It was kind of interesting. That's where Good Vibrations came from. Is that what did you ask me? Oh, so I would love the Beach Boys. They were my all-time favorite group. I don't know. Who's your favorite group? Favorite musical group of all time?
I tend to listen to more classical. I think the Beach Boys are certainly up there in terms of
Beatles,
and obviously been around for a long time, right? And they continue to be fresh and meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, I think the music has continued to be meaningful, more meaningful now. I mean, I'm sure, wouldn't it be nice? Almost means more now than it did back then. Or In My Room, such a melancholy, sort of lonely vibe about that song. I think their songs certainly have lasted the test of time because, certainly, like I said, where we are right now with discord being at an all-time high and decency at an all-time low, like, thank God we have the Beach Boys music. I loved the Beach Boys growing up.
What advice, John, do you give to you? You described before that sort of there are actors that, if you will, make it big pretty quickly. And then the challenge is sustaining that over the course of a career, as you've done. And then there are actors that, as you mentioned, takes 20 years to get a prominent role. What advice do you give to ones in each category? Because I'm sure you're interacting all the time with people who've been very successful early in their career who maybe are having a bit of a slump, and also people that have been at it and yet it just hasn't quite happened yet.
I guess I would say never give up, because you hear these stories all the time, like a Jason Alexander who didn't start working until he was in his 30s, I guess. But it's a different game now, because of social media. And I mean, people become, sadly, we'll hire someone for a show and they'll go, I remember, not for this show, but at times you go like, oh, is this really the best actor? Look at their social media. Look at, they have 1 million, 10 million people here. I said, come on, man, really? But I guess, it's sort of important. But I guess you got to just keep working at it and be as good as you can. And then do what I do if you can. Just don't get caught up on. It's harder even with social media. I don't know how I could have made it with that. It's such a drag for kids to have to read this bullshit, this negative stuff on. You were talking about one of the things that fueled me earlier. We were talking about just, the wanting to do it. But I was in 11th grade, and I was at this party. It was a block party. So there's all these parties down the street, and someone came up to me and said, "Hey, this girl, name names. She was the most beautiful girl in all of Orange County. She thinks you're really cute. She wants to go out with you." I said, "What, really?" And that didn't happen to me at that point, And I was very gawky, and I went into the party and I was telling everybody, "Oh, so-and-so wants to go out with me. She thinks I'm cute." And then it kind of traveled down to the next party, then the next party, and then the final party where her boyfriend was. So I'm sitting in a car, and he comes out. I didn't know who he was. He said, "Roll the window," and I roll the window, and she starts wailing me in the face with fists, And I had this big black eye, and I was like, it was so terrible. And it was just the humiliation that I felt, and there was the word bullying really wasn't around then. There was no counselors that taught, it was just, and this guy I had to go to school with him, and I had to be careful going around any corner. He's writing on the walls, "I'm going to beat you up," and I was living in fear. And one day I looked in the mirror and said, I got to become famous. I got to become famous and show this guy. And I'm telling you, I hate to say it because it sounds petty, but I was like, I'm going to show this son of a bitch. I'm going to get famous. I'm going to have bodyguards. They're going to beat him up. They're going to hold him down. I'm going to give him a black eye. And, so I'm telling you, I can specifically remember certain, milestones in my career. It's like, wait till he sees me, But now that I'm successful and fine, I don't hold any grudges. I've moved on. I have a great career. But if I ever see him, if I ever walk into a bathroom where he's working, cleaning toilets, and I say to him, "Yeah, hey, pal, thank you. I want to thank him. I just want to thank him. Dumbass."
Yeah.
But I was getting back to that. It must be hard with the social media, and so if you're dealing with that, and turn it off. Don't read it. Don't believe it. Don't just get away from it. But if you want to be an actor or actress, the world is at your fingertips. I mean, your phone can make a movie. I used to make movies on my mom's 16 millimeter camera, and you'd have to go get it developed, and and then who do I show it to? My parents in the living room. Now you got phones, you can make a movie, you put it on YouTube, you put it on social media. So there's no excuse if you're not doing that. Do that for sure. And then just be a good person. Like you, Lloyd Minor. Study hard,
One
be
like
the best,
you,
right?
John. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, John, thank you so much. In closing, there are two questions I like to ask every guest. First, what do you think are the most important qualities for a leader today? And second, what gives you hope for the future?
You give me hope. My son gives me hope. My wife gives me hope. If I look, I think it is that, looking through my son's eyes at things, they're innocent and it's all new and it's all fresh and he's not jaded. I mean, I guess that's the a goal too, to keep them like that. But it's fun to see the world through his eyes, and I think there is hope. I was doing a Beach Boy concert recently, and I was talking about, there was a time when the whole world wanted to be us, because the imagery that the Beach Boys were painting, the tableau of optimism and hope and happiness and good vibes and being good people, and I said, there's some people that say, we're not that anymore, or we can never get back to that. And I said, and it was 10,000 people. I said, but if they were here right now seeing this, okay, I'd like to show them what's happening here. There was 10,000 people singing and loving and holding, they were going like this. And so it's here. It is here, I think. That's what we can't give up hope, because we have it in our hearts. We have to just listen to it. We have to amplify it, and we have to think of others. But I think we could get back to that. I don't mean to sound Pollyanna. I get what's going on in this world. I know the divisiveness. I get it, but I try to be positive and present the goodness in everyone, like my mother did. And what was the other question?
Most important qualities for a leader today.
If you guys are watching this, just look right at the camera and look at Dean Lloyd Minor, who is kind and smart and good to his students and people around him. I think that's a good leader.
Okay. Well, thanks, John.
See how I turned that around there, Lloyd? But I mean it. I've read all about you, and I've been listening to it.
Thank you.
I appreciate you having me on today.
Thank you. Thank you for being with me today, and for being with us today, and for all that you're doing for all of us. And this has been a great conversation, a lot of fun, and very enlightening.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to the Minor Consult with me, Stanford School of Medicine Dean Lloyd Minor. I hope you enjoyed today's insightful discussion with award-winning actor and musician John Stamos. Please send your questions by email to theminorconsult@theminorconsult.com, and check out our website, theminorconsult.com, for updates, episodes, and more. To get the latest episodes of The Minor Consult, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please rate the podcast 5 stars.
You got it.
Your feedback helps make this podcast happen. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today. I look forward to our next episode. Until then, stay safe, stay well, and be kind.
There you go.